Hey everyone, Peace Mike Manacha. I hope this video finds you doing super well. So I posted this video a couple days ago, at least at the time of recording this, on Twitter, where I just kind of showed this application that I've been working on, which is a very simple Telestrator application. And PS, you should follow us over on Twitter to just kind of keep up to date with all these random projects that we're working on. But it was solely for the reason that I couldn't find a decent Telestrator application that was out there available on the market that was pretty easy to use and cheap to set up. So just kind of decided to DIY hack this in myself. It's by no means perfect. I think there's a lot of things that can be worked on, and I'd love to hear down in the comments below if this is something you might consider using, if there are features that you'd like to see added or what you would like to see with this. For now, I'll probably just kind of keep it as is and use this for any sort of videos that I make down the road. But if there's interest, I'd love to hear that down in the comments below. But just to quickly show this off, we're using the knuckles here, and this is built with SteamVR. And so literally it's just using hand tracking, very similar to any mixed reality sort of application. I can select a few preset colors here. That's just tied to different buttons that I have on the controllers. If I want to set the width, I have that off of the trackpad here. So if I want this to be super big, we can do that. I can also set this to be pretty tiny. Yeah, and that's just kind of pretty easy to do. I'm just going off of the y-axis here. There is some more features for alignment purposes that I will show once we dive into the Unity project for this. But that'll use the grips. Otherwise, it's literally just triggers to draw. I have a dead zone right here, which drives me nuts, and I need to figure out why Steam doesn't want to track there. But outside of that, yeah, it's fairly straightforward. I've tied a couple other additional features onto the keyboard just because I was running out of space and I didn't know where to put these. But we have a, oops, I need to click on the Telestrator first. Clicking on this, I have Z, which is tied to undo, and then I have a clear all that we can do for just solely clearing everything and not having to worry about that. Let me go ahead and switch over to desktop mode, and then we can take a look further at what this project is doing. This starts tracking again, there we go. I have this tied to just a button press here, but this allows me to hide the virtual objects and just only show the fact that we're showing lines on a key press. You can see here in the top right that I have all the parameters that I need to go about setting the location of my virtual camera to match the location of the physical camera, which is exactly what you guys are seeing right here. And so it's basically a mapping from my VR play space into the real world. And once we do that, you now have that alignment so that I can have all the lines that are showing up here be one-to-one, both in terms of depth as well as so that's depth as well as XY. So that's what's going on here. In Unity, this is the project. You can see here under our packages actually that we are using VRTK as our means for mainly for the VR component, which is aligning the virtual camera to the real world. So the way I would traditionally do that when setting up is I have this interactable over here. It's literally just a cube and a cylinder for the visuals. But the idea is under here we have our quote-unquote MR camera, and that is what's rendering to our game view and to the desktop that I can then plug into OBS. And what this will do is it just renders everything that I tell it to render pretty much. The nice part about having VRTK in here is that I can grab with the interactables this camera and then just basically drag it over to where the physical camera is, and then I can just tweak the parameters just a little bit to save myself some time when setting up. And you'll get a good enough result after doing it several times and tweaking a few different things that you feel comfortable with the alignment. And it doesn't have to be exactly one-to-one as you would have to do with MR, where you might need to go through some extra set of processes to really get the parameters to line up exactly one-to-one with the physical and virtual camera. So, but otherwise the steps are the same. We just set up a camera here. We have that render out to the main display so that we override the VR camera. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. Actually, now that I think about it, if I disable this, that's how we align the virtual and physical world, is through this, literally this camera object. And I kind of guessed the FOV to be about 39-ish since I'm using a webcam. But yeah, that's one thing to note there. We have a post-processing volume here just to add a nice bloom effect to the lines that are drawn. But otherwise, the way this is all working is through our draw manager. And this draw manager just literally takes in a line renderer, and we add in a bunch of points to basically, whenever I press the button, track all the world points that are in the scene here, and then go ahead and add them to the line renderer, which automatically does the rendering for us. So a very simple way. This honestly doesn't look too good if you're actually doing this in VR. And you can probably check out our tilt brush video on why we chose not to use a line renderer back then for VR purposes. But for something like this, which is literally meant for using VR for 2D, a line renderer works great. There's a lot in the draw manager that I won't go into a lot of detail about, but the kind of important things to note are some of the key commands here that are available. We were handling a lot of things through events because we're using VRTK and SteamVR, and I think that's super valuable as far as just assigning all of these methods to the correct events within the editor, and I can show those in a little bit. You'll see the width updates, checking for triggers, checking for position. All of these are just events. Every time we press a button, we create the line. So we set the color and we set the width. We add points every time the position moves. I added a couple of nice features here just to help align with the fact that I'm drawing in 3D but really I want to map to 2D. So what I do that's a little tricky to explain but makes sense visually is that first point that I draw, I get the Z offset from the camera, and then I apply that Z offset to every position that I draw. So if I draw, but then I kind of move my hand back, it'll still look like I'm drawing in a straight line, even though the depth has gone off. Some of the cool things that happen with that is when I draw in a circle here, it actually flips the circle into being a 2D circle that you can actually see as opposed to having the depth. And I think that's just kind of a simple feature, but it really sells the fact that you're building this Telestrator that's designed for the 2D experience. And other than that, really, I mean, most of this is really boilerplate code to just save myself time. There's nothing fancy that's going on. The real trick is just making sure the cameras are aligned with everything that you're doing, and then kind of adding those visual tweaks that you want with the line renderer. Just to explain some of the VRTK stuff that I mentioned. So if we head over to the camera rig that was provided by VRTK, you can see our grabbing, which is used with the interactable. You can see the events here. So like we just drag and drop methods for the draw manager to set the state. It's kind of convenient in that regard. We also have those set up within SteamVR using SteamVR 2.0 so that we have all of these kind of labeled as methods so that we can just assign them to the controller. And we have all of these set up. And those are defined within SteamVR input under our Telestrator. And I can actually open up the binding UI just so that we can kind of see exactly what this looks like. You can see here, this is how you would set it up. So I set the draw function to be on the trigger. Of course, if you want to move it around, you can totally do that. But I think the way that they've set this up is slowly starting to make sense for me. It's kind of, it feels a little strange on the abstractions with SteamVR 2.0, but now that I've kind of gotten through this flow a couple times, I think it feels a little more straightforward on how you should go about creating the abstractions for the buttons and then mapping them within the SteamVR utility. Other than that, there's really nothing terribly complex going. I mean, I think moving into the future, there are a few things that I might consider doing. Some more fancy features, because I've been playing around with face detection. If you can draw on a face and have that like kind of continually move with you, I think that could be pretty interesting in the context of Windows, especially. I mean, you see that all the time probably on AR filters, but in the context of Windows, you rarely see that. I think there's some probably nice quality of life updates that I would want to figure out as well, around the width and coloring and making the visuals stand out a little bit better. One thing that I think could be really interesting is kind of bringing in 3D objects and kind of having that 3D mode where you could potentially set up particles and have those kind of interacting around, something that you couldn't traditionally do with a Telestrator. I think there's a lot of fun things that can be added. I probably will add them on a case-by-case basis as I think they're appropriate to explaining certain concepts. But I think there's a lot of interesting things that you can do. And I mean, this was a project I built in just a few hours just because I couldn't find a good Telestrator application to really build kind of more interesting types of content. So I think that will cover everything that I wanted to go over in this video. Again, would love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below with if this is something you would use, if there's something that you would really want to see added. Again, like I mentioned, not entirely sure what the future of this project particularly is outside of kind of more different types of videos that you might see on the channel. But if there's interest in using it, definitely let me know. So I think that'll wrap this up. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. This has been Fuse Man, and I'm signing out.